Then let's begin with the word of prayer. Father, in our own ways, each of us has dedicated our lives to serving you. But today, we remember those who not only gave their time and effort, but gave their physical lives as well, so that others could follow you. And we remember them and honor their memory. These things we remember in the name of Jesus. Amen. All right, we're going to start with the Gospel of Luke. All right. Luke 9, verses 7 through 9. Thank you.
This is my Living Bible.
Living Bible, okay.
Nice and loud though for the camera, please.
When reports of Jesus' miracles reached Herod, the governor, he was worried and puzzled, for some were saying, "This is John the Baptist, come back to life again." And others, "It is Elijah, or some other ancient prophet risen from the dead." These rumors were circling all over the land.
One more, let's see what happens.
"I beheaded John,"
Yeah.
Herod said. "So who is this man about whom I hear such strange stories?"
Okay, good, thank you. All right. 5 minutes. So, what do you see in this one?
Well, so Herod scratching his head about what's going on, to me, that should be no surprise because in those days they did not have the communications that we have today.
Okay.
They would get somebody's opinion of what someone they knew might have heard.
Okay.
So everything was done by rumor.
Okay.
And so to me, to be perplexed about anything would be no surprise at all.
Okay. What is perplexing here, though? It seems kind of odd, doesn't it?
Well, so
they seem to believe in either reincarnation or, the spirit taking over or something.
It's an
Because-
interesting combination. Either it's a actual resurrection or it's a repossession where a spirit moves from one to another, apparently. Odd.
Yes.
Okay?
Herod didn't like this very well.
I myself had John beheaded, remember? Lose your head. But there's something about some guy who is doing kinds of things that John did,
Or Elijah.
or Elijah, which is whom John was imitating, in hopes that Elijah would come. Maybe it worked. Maybe when John died, Elijah came finally. I don't think so. Nonetheless, it's a little confusing, especially considering what we would encounter later, okay, in other places. So this is Luke's understanding of it. Any question or thought or comment here? We'll try to get something a little bit more substantial.
well, other than Luke's writings tend to be a lot about physical things that you can see and touch
Yes.
and hear.
Yes.
And some of the others have a little bit more softer information within their text.
Good. If Luke is the writer of Luke and the writer of Acts, the writer of Acts says, I'm collecting all this stuff so that we have an orderly account. So he's collecting stuff that's hard evidence, it's information, and not as soft as someone who said, I was there watching. So, yes, interesting. Okay, let's go on then. Let's kind of clear the deck a little bit more to what we're familiar with. Matthew 14, starting at verse 6.
Yeah, we got that.
Okay.
But when Herod's birthday came, the daughter of Herodias danced before the company, and she pleased Herod, so much that he promised an oath to grant her whatever she might ask. Prompted by her mother, she said, "Give me the head of John the Baptist here on a platter." The king was grieved, yet out of regard for his oaths, for his guests, he commanded it to be given. How far am I going?
Keep going. Yeah,
Okay.
verse 12.
He sent and had John beheaded in the prison, and the head was brought on a platter and given to the girl who brought it to her mother. His disciples came and took the body and buried it, and then they went and told Jesus.
All right, so Matthew's filling out what Luke didn't. He's kind of telling the actual story of how John died. Okay? What about this is interesting?
Well, to me, just the gruesomeness of it. I mean, the young girl is asking for the head of somebody. You know, she didn't think that up, probably.
The young girl?
Well, I don't know how old,
That's what I'm asking. It seems to me that in popular culture, this is the dance of the seven veils, COVID time, dance of the seven masks. I'm just kidding. This was it has been shown in the movies that this was a sexy thing. And this girl was not very young. She was enticing. And Herod was a lecherous old guy. And he promised her anything? Was Herod so stupid?
I think he had inebriated her. He probably was not, he was probably drunk.
There you go. He was.
And I think that his mouth got ahead of his brain and other parts of his body. But the gruesomeness of it is Ken is saying, for this young woman to all of a sudden be confronted with what she had asked, must have been horrendous, because I don't think she really comprehended what she was asking for. I think it was, Mom said, ask for this, and so she was fulfilling Mom's request, and Herod followed through.
So you're perceiving her as somewhat innocent in the realities of life, of the politics of the time. If she were old enough to dance the seven veils, she probably had some curvature to the body, which would indicate that she was of fair age, right?
Well,
and in these days, culture was not innocent.
Well, we know that it was real common for these to be married by 14.
True.
And, they get much beyond that, they were considered an old maid. That's true, we know that to be true.
Okay.
But so, granted, we don't really know her age, but regardless of that, that's a pretty egregious thing to have happen.
True.
But we also know that it happened in those days with frequency. I mean, they go by and when they crucify a criminal, they hung him up for all to see.
Right at the crossroads, so everybody would see. This was a gruesome age.
Sure is.
Well,
It sounds like this girl was trying to do what a mother wanted.
yes.
Strong that this mother's.
She's very in tune with her mother.
Yeah.
I wonder if she was surprised when her mother asked for this. After all, didn't Herod ask her what she wanted? And she goes, "Oh, well, let me find out what my mom says I can have." Oh. Okay. And Mom seems to have this thing about this Baptist guy.
Well, we know why, and we know Mom was very manipulative. No question.
We don't know why yet, but we're about to go into that.
Okay, yeah.
Anything else here? Good old dinner guests must have been pleased also, right?
Yeah.
I think that I would lose my appetite for dessert. Yeah. Oh, I don't want anything on that platter, thank you. It's also curious, isn't it, that the disciples of the Baptist was allowed to take his body. If he was a bad criminal and they hated him, wouldn't they just chuck it on a pile somewhere? But they actually allowed his disciples to come and take the body.
Well, and we knew that Herod listened to John. That's why he wasn't killed right away, because Herod liked to hear him speak.
Well, we'll have to go to someone who tells us that, because so far that hasn't been said. Let's see. Okay, let's go on. And finally, let's go to the Gospel of Mark. And then Mark is going to fill it in more, surprisingly, than either Matthew or Luke. Mark 6, 14 to 16.
Oh, I've got it.
Okay.
Herod Antipas the king soon heard about Jesus because everyone was talking about him. Some were saying, "This must be John the Baptist raised from the dead. That is why he can do such miracles." Others said, "He's the prophet Elijah." Still others said, "He's a prophet like the other great prophets of the past." When Herod heard about Jesus, he said, "John, the man I beheaded, has come back from the dead."
Okay, well, let's stop for a moment, because this fills in some questions I had. They were talking about Jesus. That Jesus is John raised from the dead. Isn't that what it seems to say? That's what Herod... But John and Jesus were both ministering at the same time, weren't they? How could Jesus be John raised from the dead?
Well, clearly Herod had not heard of Jesus prior to this.
Apparently not. Apparently Jesus was not on his radar until now, later. Okay, so later he's going, this guy must have been the John that I had killed. Or Jesus must be Elijah returned. Or he may have been one of the old prophets, the other prophets that were predicted.
And at this time, they still haven't connected it with the slaughter of the innocents.
No, you're right. It's confusing, isn't it? If this were John raised from the dead, how old must this Jesus have been? John was only killed a short time before, no more than in 3 years, before Jesus will be crucified. So, John, raised from the dead, came back as an adult Jesus?
You're not talking about raised from the dead. That's a physical thing. They put him in the grave and then he's raised from the dead.
Yes.
That's not reincarnation.
John risen from the dead. So it could be a spirit thing where John has moved into the body of the one we call Jesus. Right?
Or his head was magically
Poof.
put back on and, here he is.
Wow, that would be a good Halloween thing, wouldn't it? I'm just looking at this and it seems confusing
Yeah.
because we aren't there. I think that might have something to do with this. Okay, let's continue with Mark 6:21 through 29.
Okay, so you don't want all the
No,
stuff.
no.
26, you said?
Yeah, chapter 6, starting in verse 21.
Okay. Herodias' chance finally came on Herod's birthday. He gave a party for his high government officials, army officers, and leading citizens of Galilee. Then his daughter, also named Herodias, came in and performed a dance that greatly pleased Herod and his guests. "Ask me for anything you like," the king said to the girl, "and I will give it to you." He even vowed, "I will give you whatever you ask, up to half my kingdom." That's the standard thing. She went out and asked her mother, "What should I ask for?" Her mother told her, "Ask for the head of John the Baptist." So the girl hurried back to the king and told him, "I want the head of John the Baptist right now on a tray." Then the king deeply regretted what he had said, but because of the vows he had made in front of his guests, he couldn't refuse her. So he immediately sent an executioner to the prison to cut off John's head and bring it to him. The soldier beheaded John in the prison, brought his head on a tray, and gave it to the girl, who took it to her mother. When John's disciples heard what had happened, they came to get his body and buried it in a tomb.
Okay, anything strike you?
Well, just the idea that he would give an oath of up to half his kingdom he was being what am I trying? Dramatic for his guests is what he was doing. I suspect.
Okay. I was going to say
I think
stupid.
they've been drinking a little wine too.
That's possible, yeah.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised at a party. Okay? What is curious, I think, is that he made the oath after she was done dancing. She came in and danced, pleased him, and then the king said, "Ask for me what you want." Now that's a little odd time to offer up a half of a kingdom.
Yeah.
Normally you would do that to entice someone to do something for you. It's already a done deal. So I have a real problem with this whole thing. Okay? It just, I don't know what to do with that.
Now, in the other translations of this Holy Scriptures, Greek or the like, is that the sequence?
Yes, in the Gospel of Mark, that is the sequence.
So we do know that a few years later, Julius Caesar became famous by offering forgiveness and the life of his adversaries after he conquered them, rather than killing them.
Okay?
And he did that clearly to increase what people thought of him.
Okay.
It was really all about Caesar, but it was to make him. He wanted the job for life, and he wanted people to see him as a compassionate person.
Okay.
I could see King Herod trying to do something not exactly the same, but similar in that he's saying, "Look what I'll give you because you've pleased me.
Okay.
Now other people who please me, maybe I'll give them something."
There you go. So it's a good political thing, maybe, huh?
Yeah, a political ploy.
Sounds like his brain must have been functioning beyond the wine then, if he made a political ploy like that. He's thinking still. It doesn't sound like he's drunk out of his mind.
But I doubt that he had that in mind.
Oh, I'm sure he didn't.
Yeah.
No doubt about that. Let's look at her personality a little bit. She came out and did a dance that pleased Herod and the guests. The guests would have included men and women. Okay?
In my book, it says the stag party.
A stag party. Okay, there we go. That comes out of that DeMille's or whatever the movie, right?
Well, would they have had women? Because generally women and men didn't.
This is a party time. This is different. And you know, if Herodias is there, there will be other women there as well.
That's true.
So here comes this voluptuous, sexy woman into the stag party. And she does a dance that pleases Herod so much that when then it's done, he's panting and sweating, he's all hot, he offers her a bonus. Right? That kind of makes sense?
That's how Cecil B. DeMille puts it.
Cecil B. DeMille, that's the one I was trying to think of, and I got it wrong. Okay.
I guess in my mind, I still think the idea of this guy is a king. He is a politician.
Absolutely.
There's got to be politics at work.
Oh, I agree 1,000%. And not that that's legal, okay?
I mean, he can't go back on what he said.
Correct. So you always are careful what you say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? He is a serious politician. He is going to protect his crown. He's going to protect his, he's vicious beyond
Isn't
imagination.
he called later the fox, you fox?
Yeah, well,
Jesus called him that,
Jesus-
yeah.
He's not stupid. In fact, he's brilliant. He is absolutely determined, no matter what it takes, to keep his kingdom. And it goes off the deep end for some one female doing a dance and offers her half of his kingdom. That's just, it just makes no sense.
Part of it might also be because he knew her well, he didn't expect her to ask for a great thing.
Correct. He didn't expect this kind of a response. Of a sexy, older teenager, at least 18, maybe something in that range, because she's got to be, sexy looking. You see the problem with this thing? It doesn't fit, does it?
Well, most people would assume that she would ask, regardless of how old she was, that, I'd like, some gold or those pretty jewels I saw over there. A new wardrobe.
A
There we
house.
go.
A house. maybe.
Sure, my own old castle.
Yeah.
Palace. Excellent. Very good. What has happened to our popular imagination is Cecil B. DeMille's and that whole concept, and it goes back for a long, long time, to back to ancient time, where she was doing a sexy dance at this stag party. It's not a stag party, by the way. Okay? She was doing this enticing, sexy seven veil dance. And that's ancient. It goes back, way back beyond the Middle Ages, where this was the concept of what was happening. I don't agree. And I thought I would kind of show you what I've got. Any questions, thought, or comment at this point before I move on? Okay, because now it's going to make sense. I'm sorry. Here we go. It's in the spring of 29, okay? They're at a place called, I love trying to pronounce these names, Machaerus, whatever it is. Where that is one of the fortresses that Herod built down here on the east of the Dead Sea, where he could escape to it if he needed to.
Can you point there again, please?
Sure, right here.
Thank you.
And if I'm going to bring it up so you can actually see, right off the Dead Sea, straight across the Dead Sea, way down. See, here's the Dead Sea. There it is. Now I'll get out of the way.
Okay, John,
Yes.
question though. Herod built that, Herod the Great.
The Great building.
And this is
This
his
is Antipas,
son,
his son.
Herod Antipas,
Correct.
okay.
My apologies for not being clear there. Yes, this is one of the places. Another one was Masada. It was right over here. There were other fortresses around that he had built, Herod the Great had built, because he was afraid of the people. His son was every bit as afraid of the people. Okay? So he used them. And he came down here during the winter to stay warmer. It's still not quite springtime. It's just getting started, and he's going to have his birthday party. And his wife is going to treat him to a birthday party. Okay? Let's find out. Back in May of 28, Antipas had the Baptist arrested because he was too popular with the people and because Herod's new wife, Herodias. I'm going to show you this because this comes out of Josephus. But Herodias, Josephus 18. But Herodias was married to Herod Philip. That's his whole name. It's another Herod, but this is Herod Philip, the son of Herod the Great, who had a daughter, Salome, after whose birth Herodias took upon her to confound the laws of our country and divorced herself from her husband while he was alive, and was married to Herod Antipas, her husband's brother by the father's side. You getting this? She's married to one brother, okay? She is the daughter of Herod, by the way. She's married to Herod Philip. She divorces him, Philip. She divorces him, takes her daughter from him with her and goes and married Herod Antipas, his brother.
She was Herod's daughter also, by a different mother?
Was she Herod the Great's
Well, I don't
daughter? I'm trying to remember. I don't remember that. I'll have to check that. I forgot that.
I mean, Herodias is...
I think it is, but I'm not sure now. I'd have
But
to
being
stop.
married to his brother and then going over
To marry the other brother.
Yeah, that in itself is no doubt a political maneuver. She was going where they were the greater politicians.
Correct. Herod Philip was up by the Sea of Galilee up here. He was controlling this area up here. It was a small area. Yeah, she's marrying into a guy who's got a much bigger potential. This is politics. And it doesn't seem that the Jews thought that that was an appropriate divorce. After all, her
I didn't think women could divorce.
bingo, but remember, they're also imitating the Greek stuff and the Roman stuff, the Gentile stuff. And she just left it and called it a divorce, apparently. Okay? And then she goes down to increase her political power by marrying his brother. Now, in the Roman world, that wouldn't matter at all. They don't care. But the Jewish world wasn't quite that way. They had different perspective on how families could work and what you should do or not do within a family. So this is from Josephus. He's giving us more information on her, Herodias, what she did and such. She had a daughter with Herod Philip. Keep these Herods separate. Okay? Herod Philip. Okay.
She also must have had something going for her, either politically or physically, to be able to position herself where Herod would take her in.
Yes.
And marry her.
And I don't know what that is. We'll assume it's, at the very least, she looks good.
Yeah.
Okay? The probability is she brought some political authority or power with her.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know. That we don't know. All we know is she divorced one Herod and married the other, the brothers. Okay?
Just like Hollywood.
Just like the Romans. Any thoughts or comments yet? Okay.
So does that lead you thinking she was having an affair with that other brother?
Not likely an affair the way we think of an affair today. She probably left Philip and went to Antipas for relative support. But she may have had him before. Don't know. But at the very least, it was political protection. It's still not good, not proper for a woman to try to live on her own, especially in the big political world. So, let's move it on then. Recently separated from Herod's brother Philip, strenuously objected to the way the Baptists railed against their marriage. See, the Baptist became known because he kept saying, "That's wrong." And everybody heard it.
So that's adultery.
Yes. He had been sent to the fort, and that's why he was finally, she convinced, she weaseled, she manipulated, she forced Herod Antipas to arrest John. And when she did, he was taken, when he finally did, he was taken to the fortress here, on the east side of the Sea of Galilee. It was here. Okay, this is that fortress inside the mountaintop there.
Oh, it's inside or?
Yes, it is.
Oh.
Okay, you go up over here and you go up into the peak. And that's the same thing as it was you saw earlier, the one outside of Bethlehem. Yeah. Yeah, man, I'll think of the name
Masada?
later. What?
Masada?
No, Masada was totally different. That was really unique. But this is the typical way of doing it. You build up what's already there, and you build your stuff inside, and then the walls surround it this way. So you go up and in to your fortress. Okay, that was typical. And I'll think it was Herodium. That's what I keep on math. Herodium looked exactly the same. Okay? Okay. On the east side of the Dead Sea, where he had been a prisoner for almost a year. According again to Josephus, 18th chapter. Now, when many others came in crowds about him, Antipas, for they were greatly moved or pleased by hearing John's words. Okay, let me slow that down a little bit. Crowds came around Antipas, for they were moved by the words of John. I hope I've read that correctly. Okay? Herod, who feared lest the great influence John had over the people might put it into his power and inclination to raise a rebellion. Oh, let me try to put it in words. John was popular. Herod, according to Josephus, was afraid that he was going to raise a rebellion against Herod, against Antipas. Okay? For they seemed ready to do anything he should advise them. Uh-oh. He has authority over them. He has power. He has motivation. He can motivate his people to do anything he wants. I'm afraid of him. I better get him arrested. Okay? Thought it best, by putting him to death, to prevent any mischief John might cause, and not bring himself, Antipas, into difficulties, by sparing a man who might make him repent of it when it should be too late. So, again, into words. He had him killed to prevent a rebellion, to prevent John from causing a rebellion which would cause Antipas problems. This is what Josephus is telling us.
So we know that there is a long history of people in these days and even much earlier that killed anyone who they thought would be a threat, including their brothers and sisters, whoever.
And Daddy Herod the Great was one of them.
Yeah.
He killed wives, in-laws, children, everything, just to stay in power. And his sons kind of went along the same route.
Mm-hmm.
Very typical. Monarchs in this days, it was a violent, violent time. Okay? They didn't have to worry about any other laws. They were a law unto themselves. They could do whatever they want if they had the army to support them. Okay? If John raises an army from the people, that's going to cause a problem. So, John has to die. Otherwise, Antipas looks weak. He's got to kill him before John can do this stuff. Hence, he has him killed. Accordingly, he was sent a prisoner out of Herod's suspicious temper to Machaerus, the castle I before mentioned, and was there put to death. So we know he's put to death down here, according to Josephus. Not in Galilee, way up here. Herod Antipas was the ruler of Galilee up here and Perea down here. Split areas.
I thought you said Philip was up in Galilee.
Philip was to the east of the Sea of Galilee.
Oh, okay.
Out where we would see Bethsaida, on the other side of the Jordan coming in. And I'll try to, if I have the map pop up, I'll show you.
Like the Decapolis area?
Sure, not quite that far, but to the northeast. Okay, so according to Josephus, this was a big political thing. Okay, there was no indication in Josephus about the wifey thing or dancing. It was pure politics. Okay? Keep that in mind. We need to know that. Anything else strike you here? Anything?
Josephus writing?
First century? Yeah, first century.
Okay. So,
Just after the Jewish wars, the destruction of the temple and all that, 80s probably.
so he might have, I mean, he was looking at it strictly from a political.
Oh, yes.
He might not have even heard about all this other silly Jewish stuff.
He was writing the Jewish history for the Romans. Okay?
And they would understand.
Oh,
that
this makes
the
perfect
whole-
sense.
The whole Herodias stuff would be
Lost,
irrelevant.
totally lost on them. Yeah, this makes sense. So you have two different perspectives here. You have the stories in the gospel, which says it's because of John's berating of Antipas because he shouldn't have been married to his brother's wife. Whereas Josephus says this is Herod, smart dude, terribly politic, doing what it takes to keep his kingdom's control. Okay, now let me finish with the story a little bit. Okay, let me go back for a moment. He had been sent to the fortress of Machaerus on the east side of the Dead Sea, where he had been a prisoner for almost a year. Herodias wanted him dead. But Antipas feared the people, thought that the Baptist might be a holy man, and he was hungry for information about the coming kingdom. Whoa. Does that strike you? Because we haven't mentioned that part before. Why? These are the three reasons why Herod didn't kill. He arrested him and didn't kill him. Number one, he arrested him because he was afraid of the people. That makes good sense. We know that from what it says in the Gospels. And probably that's reflected in Josephus. He thought the Baptist might be a holy man. If he might be Elijah, or it might be he's preaching stuff like this, these random holy men, whatever that might be, he didn't want to mess with God, just in case. Maybe. Okay?
Well, and you know that he knew the stories that came from Herod the Great about this king that's supposed to rise up.
That's the third part. The third part is there's going to be a new kingdom. And we're going to keep our eyes open looking for them. And in this new kingdom, there has to be a king. Who better than Antipas? If he could find out more about this kingdom, and of course it's a kingdom on earth of Jews in control, if he could put himself in a proper position, he might be that king. So he wanted to know more about this kingdom, and John could tell him.
Because he'd been preaching about the coming kingdom.
Coming kingdom. So it makes sense to keep him alive and to take interest in what he says and keep him in prison. But you can't kill him because the people would be upset. So you just keep him there as a prisoner. Don't make a martyr out of him if you can help it. Keep him in, and that way you can talk to him. Tell me more about the kingdom. What do you mean about this? Tell me, maybe, can I be that king? Does this begin to make some sense to you? Do you have a question yet? Or comment? Okay, then let's go on. Let's finally get to the details. Herodias had one daughter, Salome, who had been born around the year 20 AD to Herodias and Philip. What year are we in right now?
Said 29.
29.
So she's 9.
She's around 8 or 9 years old. You want to know her age? That's her age. But Herodias had divorced Philip around 25 AD and moved in with Antipas. In 27 AD, they married. Antipas was in his late 40s, while Herodias was in her early 40s. This relationship was totally wrong by Jewish standards. Herodias was not legally divorced from Philip, and the Baptists had been constantly condemning it. This is adultery, sort of. This is not acceptable in Jewish circles. Any questions or thoughts so far?
This isn't really important, but I'm surprised that Herodias was that old to have such a young daughter.
She was 30 about the time she had this daughter,
Well,
and that is a little unusual.
A little late now in those days.
But she may have had other children. We don't know that. We only know that this might have been her last child, born in her old age. We don't know.
Yeah.
But what we do have is that she has a daughter called Salome, who is about 8 or 9 years old. Any questions, thought, or comment? As winter approached, Antipas moved himself and his friends down to his winter retreat in the fortress Machaerus. In March, before Antipas moved again up to Tiberias, Herodias decided to throw a birthday party for him, and she invited a number of friends. It's a political thing. You're bringing in military people, men and women, they're having a party, birthday party. This is not supposed to be anything special, anything ugly. This is a birthday party. This is not a stag party, despite that comment. Okay? Any question or thought so far? Herodias is just throwing him a party. What a nice wifey. All the folks were eating, drinking, and being entertained when Antipas's cute 8-year-old stepdaughter came into the room. This is my interpretation. Okay? While she was waiting to deliver her message, Antipas noticed that Salome was swaying to the sound of the music. What kid was sitting off the side listening to music wouldn't do that? Okay? He asked her if she could dance. Are you able to dance? Sure, she said. I've been practicing. Sounds like an 8-year-old, doesn't it?
yeah.
Thank you. And
Clara.
thank you, yes. Granddaughter, whatever.
Was 8.
Yes. Then he had an idea. Antipas quickly asked Salome, "Will you dance for us?" Wow. I don't know. Maybe I should ask my mother, she responded shyly. To sweeten the offer and not to have to deal with Herodias, Antipas said, "I'll give you whatever you want if you will dance now, even half my kingdom, like the king offered to Esther." Esther 5:3. Then the king said to her, "What is troubling you, Queen Esther? And what is your request? Even to half the kingdom it shall be given to you." So, Herod is offering half his kingdom to a little 8-year-old girl. Pretty good. That's sweet. Just a little 8-year-old. Any question, thoughts, or comments? I know you're smiling. Oh, such a cutie. Let's see. Go ahead.
Sure different than the other interpretation.
Yeah, the other one doesn't. This one wouldn't sell as well on TV, in the movies. Well, I guess it would be okay, she said. For the next few minutes, she did some pretty fancy steps for an 8-year-old. And when she was done, everyone was clapping and smiling and laughing. What an enchanting child. Then he called her over and took her hand. "What would you like for your reward?" "I don't know," she said. "How about a shopping trip to Jerusalem?" he offered. I'll have to ask my mother, she said. You go ask her for a shopping trip, he said, and off she went. Any questions, thoughts, or comments so far? This almost sounds real, doesn't it? Sorry. When she returned, she had a strange, serious look on her face. Salome, have you decided what you would like? Antipas asked. Yes, she said. I want the head of the Baptist on a platter, she recited. Antipas knew how much Herodias hated the Baptist, but this was quite unexpected. He was trapped. An oath is an oath. So the Baptist was beheaded, and later Antipas would spread the story that he had the Baptist put to death for raising a rebellion. Sounded more decisive that way. But John's disciples were given the body to bury, they laid it in a tomb, and then some of them went north to find Jesus. Does this sound acceptable? I know it's not a good movie. I'm so sorry. Okay? How does it sound?
Well, it almost puts the king in a position of pedophilia.
And it's curious. I wasn't
Well,
thinking.
she's 8 years old.
And he's watching you just do some fancy little steps.
Well, with everybody else, but I mean, if he is turned on by an 8-year-old and is enticed to the point of giving half his kingdom, I mean, that's a...
But he offered the kingdom first.
Oh,
See, that was just a standard thing. You know, I'll give you half my stuff. Just to get her to go. But he never really meant half the kingdom. I'm sure he never really meant that. Okay? He wanted to give her a shopping trip or something, or jewels or gold or something. You know?
Pony.
Something that a pony, something an 8-year-old would want. 8-year-old would not want the head of somebody. It never crossed his mind. Except he didn't trust Herodias by any stretch of the imagination. And that's why he tried to get her to dance first, and then said, okay, what should be your reward? Oops, I better go check with my mom. And then this came back, and he was floored. He had not expected this. But in front of everybody, he had promised, and he had to.
Well, and the life of a mere peasant within their kingdom was of no value.
No, it's just that he valued the discussions about the coming kingdom with John, hoping that he could find out enough to find out whether he could be that king. Other than that, who cares? He's just another guy. He can be dead. He'll stop hassling my wife.
And assuming you have your dates correct,
Yes.
then that makes a lot of sense. We have to remember not to make too much theological truth out of Hollywood.
Yeah, don't stick too much with Hollywood. Let's see. No, okay. The word used to describe Salome is little girl. The same word is used by Jesus for the 12-year-old later. So we know she was a little girl. Okay? Antipas was far too smart a politician to ever promise a woman, such as Salome is portrayed in popular culture, which would look something like this. You don't promise her with an open-ended promise. But the little girl might well seem safe to him. Certainly, he would not have offered her half his kingdom for a dance she had already performed. Okay? The birth date is confirmed. I forgot to include that in my source for you there. But she was born approximately 8 years earlier, 9 years earlier. She was a little girl. Sorry, movies. And I didn't want to, so they got other pictures that are much worse than the one I showed you for the popular culture. We don't need to see those. Because I don't think it went that way. I think he was enchanted with his guests, with this little girl doing her fancy little dances. I just think that's just right.
but had her mom planned it that way.
Her mom had no planning until she came to her mom and said, he promised me I could have anything I wanted. And she goes, oh yeah? And that's when Herodias took it. I don't think Salome had anything in her mind. Herodias didn't do this ahead of time. I don't think she sent Salome into the room. No, she may have, as a message of some sort. But Salome was asked to dance because she was a cute little girl. My opinion only. My interpretation.
I was going to say, who among us did not try to put on a show for somebody as a small child?
Oh my gosh.
All the time.
Yeah.
Well, we have an 8-year-old granddaughter. I mean, I can see her.
She'll do. And the 10-year-old right now is trying to learn some little magic. So when they get together, they can do some little magic thing to it's just, it's the way they are. And you don't have to be overly pedophile-ish to deal with this. It's just, they're cute. They're cute. And the guests would have appreciated, especially the women, would have appreciated a cute little girl doing some dance steps. Okay? Not the dances they do today. Okay. Sorry, had to go there. Okay. Are there any other questions, thoughts, or comments?
Herodias was a pale.
No, that is not an appropriate word for her, unless it's strychnine.
She was a piece of work, let's put it that way.
She was dangerous. She was,
A lovely woman, yeah.
may have been lovely in some ways, but only externally. She was an
Schemer?
ambitious woman in a men's culture. And she was vicious about it. She took every opportunity to get her way.
And apparently good at it.
Apparently so. She dumped off the one, married the other, and then killed the guy who had been hassling her. Oh yeah, she was a real piece of work, as you say.
Do you think John sensed this, that he knew that when he went to prison that at some point he probably would die?
Oh yeah, it was not unusual at all. He was unusual in that he was not dead earlier. Herodias had him arrested, manipulated, and hassled, nagged Antipas to arrest this guy. Yeah, he knew that part. He knew that his time was limited. He was just being held on by this Herod's interest in him. The people never could revolt. They never could, especially out here, out in the middle of the desert. It isn't going to happen. Anything else? You get that expression on your face. It looks like you really want to say something.
I just find it an interesting setting, and I keep thinking about children and how they are set up and used, and it saddens me. I mean, here's this little girl probably feeling, very innocent, being used by adults, and it's just a very sad. From that point of view, to me, it's a very sad situation.
I agree.
It was very cruel.
Yes.
of
Oh,
Herodias
absolutely.
Oh, I think
Yeah.
so.
To do that.
Yeah, I think so.
So one could also argue that she wasn't being used, that she was being trained.
Well, that's another way.
Which is another way of
Yeah,
thinking
that's
of being used.
that's a scary-
yeah. And that makes sense. And in fact, I actually agree with that. That makes really good sense. Get used to it. See the head on the platter? It's no big deal. Blood, violence, no big deal.
Well, the mother was so important to this girl, too, more than the father.
Oh yeah.
That wasn't her real father.
No,
Oh,
that was her uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next week, Jesus is going to feed the Jews. Okay?